Coming to you live around the world from NOV's Studio 202. This is Inside Out Horizons. With your hosts, Lydia Brantley, Mai Belmar, Jeremy Griswold, Cass Casey, Michael Gaines, and Shelby Dumaine. Now, let's start the show.
Hello and welcome to Inside Out Horizons. I'm Michael Gaines and glad you're joining us today as we have another conversation with a very special guest. Today we have Dr. Diana Grauer, who is joining us and going to have a great conversation about energy transition and some really engaging and unique perspectives that we'll talk through today. So happy to have her. Before we get to that conversation, we want to bring in Shelby Dumaine to talk about how you can be a part of today's conversation and share your questions today with our conversation with Dr. Grauer. So, hey, Shelby, good to see you.
Hey, Michael, it's great to see you as well. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in today and joining us for the show. I'm going to go over a couple ways you can get involved, and the first is whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. You can comment in the comment section below at any point in the show, ask your questions. At the end, we're going to do a live Q&A on air, so you have the chance to have your question featured if you get that comment in before then. So let us know any questions you have. And also right now, I love, because I'm in the comment section throughout the show. And one of my favorite things is to see where everyone is tuning in from. So if you're just joining the live, go ahead and let us know where in the world are you watching from. I love seeing that and getting to see, do we have people in Argentina or is anyone, over in the UK, where's everybody watching? So I look forward to seeing that and seeing any questions you have. And I will see you again at the end of the show.
Yeah,
Back to
no,
Michael.
I like seeing those countries too because it's a great reminder of where I'd like to maybe visit and go on a vacation
exactly.
soon one day. Great. All right. Thanks, Shelby. All right. So we're going to dive into our conversation today. We have the opportunity and pleasure of having our special guest today, Dr. Diana Grauer. She is the Director of Research and Development at TechnipFMC. So, Dr. Grauer, thanks for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So, I know that you are what I consider a LinkedIn power user, and I'm always seeing some of your great content around. But for those that may not have had the opportunity to connect with you or see some of what you're doing, can you share a little bit about maybe your background and what you're into?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for TechnipFMC, and I run research. We are a large oil field services company. We have competitors in your Schlumbergers, your Halliburtons, your Bakers. But what we really focus on is offshore and subsea work. Installation, commissioning, construction of subsea resources that help us produce oil and gas offshore. This has been a really, really interesting couple of years for me because I have always been in oil and gas, except for my first 2 years in my career. And I was at the Department of Energy working on hybrid energy systems. That was 10 years ago. So now I'm just seeing all of this energy transition work that I did 10 years ago come back around. And it's really interesting to start flexing those muscles and really talking about some new technologies.
So most folks don't know, so we were connected at a recent event at a Society of Petroleum Engineers event. I think it was the Innovation and Entrepreneurial Summit. So it's kind of a Shark Tank type of event. And so I was listening to some of the conversation that you and actually an NOV colleague, Asad Mohana, had. And one of the things that struck me was some of your perspectives around energy transition, but specifically the human element, if you will. So there's obviously conversations. I mean, many of us are in the technology and the development, and yeah, like you said, research with yourself. But one of the challenges often is and is easy to overlook is the human element when you're looking at energy transition. Do you mind maybe talking a little bit about that? Because I think it's really fascinating, some of those perspectives.
Right. So one of the things that I brought up at the SPE event was sort of the moral case for oil and gas. I truly believe in a distributed energy system. I believe that we need to look at energy at a national level, but also at a local level and at a community level, especially after we had our fun Armageddon of winter in Houston this last winter. I truly think that what we need to do is start looking at this at a local level. If you start looking at it at a local level, then you start looking at your municipality, and then you start looking at others. And you start looking at those communities that are maybe not as well off as your community. And you start saying, okay, how do I bring new technology, new tools to them to make their lives better? Well, all of those things come from oil and gas. All the plastics that we use, all of the containers that we use to save food, our refrigerators, everything that we use to build houses and create shelter for people, that's all done with oil and gas. So we need to be very, very careful about not leaving those communities behind. And so I think when we have conversations around energy transition, we need to be cognizant of those communities that need our support. They need access to energy, they need access to water, they need access to shelter, and all of those things can come from oil and gas. And what we need to be very careful of is that we're not missing the point of the energy transition. The point of the energy transition is to clean up after ourselves, right? And what we don't want to do is clean up one part of the world and create the exact same mess in another part of the world that we then have to come back and clean up.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at that, do you see that the ability to do that well is limited to maybe countries or regions that may be more advanced or have better access to some of those technologies versus maybe an area that's more developing in their power infrastructure or their ability to engage?
Absolutely. And what we need to provide them is what I call a dispatchable resource. We need to provide them dispatchable energy that you can put in a bucket and hand to them in an environment that they can actually maintain, handle the infrastructure, the equipment, and get that fuel eventually into their vehicles such that they can go to work and provide for their families. So what we're looking at is we're looking at two separate groups of people, those that have and those that don't. And I think it's incredibly important that we as oil and gas professionals take into account the fact that we can make a difference in other countries. We can make a difference outside of our community. But it's through the work that we're doing and the technology that we're bringing to bear that we allow these people, these wonderful people, to have this opportunity.
One of the opportunities is that I think could be expounded upon is really looking at how to have that conversation in a place that sometimes can be a little challenging, maybe even combative might be the stronger word. What are some ways and approaches that you've considered or used when you have the opportunity to have those conversations? Because to your point, the reality is there might be folks that don't know that a lot of the plastics are derived from many of the resources in the oil and gas space. How do you help maybe bridge some of those conversations?
So the first thing that I try to do is I always try to refer to it the way I did when I worked at the Department of Energy as a hybrid energy system. That way, we're not only talking about dispatchable resources like oil and gas, we're talking about non-dispatchable resources like wind, wave, anything else that would be in the solar, in the renewable. We can't control the wind. But what we can do is buffer that supply with an oil and gas supply as well. So there's two different cases. The first one is how do we get these people energy, right? And then the second case is how do we make sure that everybody realizes that all of this, these new products come from a very, very old resource. And I think that's just about education. I really think that ties back into the challenge of STEM education for middle schoolers, for high schoolers. This is another soapbox of mine. We've got to catch them early so that they understand why you would go into oil and gas or why you would go into energy rather than being a biochemist or a brain surgeon. Why would I go into oil and gas? What am I going to do with a Ph.D. there? Well, because I had a really, really good education and an understanding of science and technology and mathematics when I was younger, and I had a great advantage because both my parents were engineers. But I had this education that allowed me to translate that into technology development, which helps me translate that technology into products that service people.
So when you mentioned your initial career foray starting in the Department of Energy, and for many it seems, and certainly it would appear that there's certainly been an accelerated momentum in the energy transition conversation over the last several years. But looking back and having been in the mix 10 years ago, are there any items that you see as being consistent from then to now, or maybe any approaches that you think are really gaining some momentum that you're excited about?
Yeah. So a couple of points that I want to make. The first one is that we're still having the same conversation around nuclear power that we were having 10 years ago, which I find incredibly frustrating. And the reason I find it frustrating is because we've got incredible technology. We effectively have unlimited clean power. But there's challenges around the regulatory environment. There's challenges around safety. There's challenges like come with everything that we do in oil and gas. There's challenges there. They can all be tackled. We just have to be ready to have that conversation. The second point I want to make is that there is no new technology out there in the last 10 years in the energy transition space. There's tweaks, there's minimal changes, there's changes in form factor, but there really hasn't been a step change in technology in the last 10 years. What we're doing and what we're finding is that different combinations of these energy systems are more effective in certain localities, in certain communities, because they have the resources available. So what we need to do is we really need to stop looking at it from a national grid level or a state level grid. And I realize that it's really easy to regulate if you have a national infrastructure, but we need to start looking at it at the local level and say, okay, what can I do with my community, for my community? What kind of resources do we have available? If we don't have resources available, then we rely on a robust, reliable, and resilient transmission system. But that should be for short distances so that we don't lose all of that energy that we've spent, all of this effort extracting.
What perspectives could you share for those that are in the oil and gas industry who are looking to really further their either commitment or understanding of how they can be a positive change in the space of energy transition, while really helping move it forward in a way that, to your point, is beneficial for those in their community, especially for those that may have multi-decade experience doing that. I know there's different perspectives and experiences, but what are some things that you found that can help resonate with folks that might be in that space?
So one of the things that I have found is that the more engaged especially engineers. I'm an engineer, so I always default to the position of an engineer. But engineers are always more effective when they're really, really engaged with their peer group and with their peer community. And it's because in high school and college, we all learn to work together on group projects. That's what engineers do, is work on group projects. So getting them into a community environment, getting them into a place where you're providing opportunities for them to engage with that engineering group and the broader engineering community, especially within a company if you want to keep things inside, the company has to be incredibly active. And the reason they have to be active is because not everybody can be in R&D. Not everybody can be in technology watch. At the end of the day, we need people to actually create the products that we're using in the field. We need those people. So what I would say is, for companies that are looking for ways to engage their employees, go back to good old-fashioned lunch and learns.
I think I remember those. Those from
Yeah.
way back in the day.
Way back.
When people came together and which I've seen creative ways
Yeah.
of even doing that, even if you have to be distanced. I mean, you can send that out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Find
yeah.
a bigger conference
Yeah.
room if you can't do it in the one that you have right now. So I think that there's, internal conferences. One of the things that I really like are internal poster competitions. So remember, in the graduate research community, they would always put on posters. I remember our chemistry and biochem groups always putting on poster sessions at conferences and at the university. What about a poster session? Why don't we just take time to share? But the challenge is that you've got to give these people the time to do that. And that's really hard right now because we don't have the resources and energy. It's hard to hire. Every time I turn around, I love them, but Amazon Web Services is stealing one of my employees.
Yep.
It's incredible that we have these transferable skills, because we do. But the tech community is just now figuring that out and starting to really start poaching really good employees now. Stop it. Stop. Wherever I can, I don't know, put me on camera so I can wag my finger. Stop it. So, getting these employees into a community environment, letting them share their ideas, letting them share their knowledge, and then go find your R&D person, whoever that may be. If you're at TechnipFMC, it's me. If you're, at some other places within the oil and gas industry, we all have R&D. Even the operators have R&D. In fact, the operators even have venture capital groups that are doing Tech Watch. Go get engaged with them. Tell them what you're doing, because I guarantee you they were always looking for subject matter experts to review these technologies and these ideas. They will reach back out to you and use you as a resource, and that's what you want.
Yeah. No, to your point, I think here at NOV, David Reed is always, I see, I'm like, why are you all over? He's like, I'm trying to find and engage with the folks that the ones that are maybe hiding in the corner that I can pull up. But to your point, having those conversations is really impactful and powerful. So, so speaking of conversations, thank you for sharing. I think this has been really, really great. And we've actually got some folks who are watching online that have some questions as well. So I don't want to take all the time, but Shelby, it looks like we've got a few folks that have some questions for Dr. Grauer.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got some really excellent questions. And I'm listening to the conversation as it's going on as well. And I love when questions I'm getting, I'm like, oh man, this is great. Y'all are setting me up for some good ones. And we actually, speaking of engaging employees and finding those people who are really excited, we actually got multiple comments of young people entering the oil and gas sector, asking for advice. One in particular said, the oil and gas is just so big. So how do they begin to find, one area or one kind of career? How do they kind of focus in on one aspect of it?
That's a really good question. I would say the first step is to engage with your professional community. So if you're in oil and gas or going into oil and gas, find your Society of Professional Engineers, your Society of Petroleum Engineers, your American Society of Mechanical Engineers. You know, figure out, they all have their events online. This is Googleable.
Yes, yeah.
It's not that hard. Start with your professional community, and I guarantee you will start finding people to really engage with because they have a similar background. And that takes care of the first two steps of the conversation, is knowing that person has a similar background and that they have similar interests. The second thing I would do is, you know, all those fun things that your company puts on, meet and greets and
That's right.
networking,
Yeah.
and we all roll our eyes. Go to them all. Go meet everybody, because there's a good chance that one of your executives, who is the sponsor of that particular program, will be there. Go introduce yourself to them. Say, I am here. This is what I am working on. This is what I want to work on. Because in order to be able to be mobile around the oil and gas industry, the leadership needs to know that you exist, and they need to know who you are and where you are and what you're doing and what your subject matter expertise is. So do all the fun company events.
So if
Show
you-
up
yeah.
for the barbecue.
Yeah.
Volunteer to pass out, you know, name badges when you have STEM day or something like that.
Those are great.
Yeah.
And if you, to your point, if it's you grit your teeth when you have to go, or it's just not your kind of thing, you can take a colleague, you know, I'm
Yeah.
sure, you know, yourself, a Shelby, right? And say, okay, like, I don't know if I can do this, but hey, let's go together. And it's a 2-for-1. So that's great.
Absolutely. Drag your friends along.
Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely. And this next question we got from Christian on LinkedIn, and he mentioned that he actually has kind of a dual background in data science and also in geophysics. And so he was wondering, what is the future of geology or geophysics in the hydrogen transition? If you could speak to that a little bit.
Right. So there's a couple of places that we're going to need his particular subject matter expertise. I wouldn't argue that hydrogen is the top one. I would say, you know, first of all, your conventional oil and gas production is not going away. I am so tired. We've been hearing about peak oil since I was born. It is going to be here to stay because we all need plastics, and I need tennis shoes to buy. That's why. On top of that, there's going to be a huge opportunity for carbon capture and storage. Now, that comes out as a gas stream, as a CO2 stream. It comes out of combustion sources and manufacturing facilities and things like that. We're going to have to compress those and re-inject them into the ground, into reservoirs. We are absolutely going to need him to work through everything that happens with that reservoir. I mean, that's an incredible scientific investigation to just figure out one reservoir. As far as hydrogen goes, I think we're going to see a lot of development of pipelines and storage. There could be some underground storage with hydrogen as well. The problem we have with hydrogen is that it's the smallest molecule on the planet. It sneaks away. If you put it in a pipeline, it will go somewhere else. It will sneak out a valve or a vent or something like that. So we need some serious hydrogen sealing technologies before we can get to reservoir storage.
Yeah, that's excellent. And we'll do a couple more questions here. We also got one. I'm going to kind of loosely word one from Shankar on LinkedIn. But what would you say, you know, there's a lot of companies in maybe traditional oil and gas. What do you think there's the transferable knowledge to other energy sources? How do you kind of see that plan going for, again, those kind of traditional oil and gas companies looking at other sources?
I absolutely think that all of your skills from oil and gas are transferable to renewable energy, or as I like to say, a hybrid energy system. Think of all the things that you do every day. You know, you have to answer and respond to emails. That's transferable. You have to manage really, really big, complex projects. That's transferable. You have an understanding of mechanical and electrical systems that most people do not have. That's transferable. How do data streams come together for our data scientist friend? You know, how do we process that information and come to a conclusion that we can take action on? You know, all of those things are transferable. And I truly believe that as the tech industry and as the utility industry and as the power industry start to realize what kind of resources that we have in oil and gas, in people, they're just going to suck them up left and right. And I'm not just talking about office engineers. I'm talking about field service. I mean, we've got guys in the field that know what they're doing and they know how to make an environment safe. Everybody needs that. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And something else we talk a lot on this show about is kind of the public image that oil and gas gets sometimes. How do we how do we approach that? How do we, you know, show, like you said, the incredible knowledge and incredible, you know, wealth of information and people and resources that we have in the oil and gas industry. So the question is, how can the individual person, the individual employee throughout the industry be part of that conversation to maybe dispel rumors or talk about, you know, what that greatness that is here?
Yeah. Again, engage with your professional society. That should be your jumping off point for all of these conversations. They will help you develop your knowledge base just by attending their events and working with their members, that will allow you to start having these crucial conversations about oil and gas. I think that the big oil and gas companies are, I don't know if we're headed in the right direction, but at least we're headed in a direction, which is incredibly important. So having the oil field services groups, having the oil companies transition over to an integrated energy company, I think makes absolute sense. I think it's a really good way to take advantage of these resources. And then what you need to do is just get involved as much as you can. Bring knowledge home. Work on your kids. That would be really, really helpful. If I had your kids coming into 7th grade science already understanding what a valve does, that would be fantastic. I mean, imagine the engineers that we have available in the Houston metropolitan area. And if they all influenced their children, you know, then we've got the next generation of oil and gas professionals here to change the world.
And it's interesting because, you know, I along with you and many others hear those maybe comments or challenges in terms of, well, how do I talk about this? And the idea is that we're not in isolation, that we have a community that is there that can provide that information and resources to help have those conversations. So that's a really great reminder. I think that's how I really started getting more exposed to the industry, was through those events, both internally in the company as well as within the broader community. So it's a really good reminder.
I started out with American Society of Mechanical Engineers. I started out in the internal combustion engine division. I worked my way up through the executive leadership team there. I was chairman for a year of the division. You know, those are cross-functional. Those people that you meet are in all different walks of life, and it's a really good opportunity to have some conversations with them.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and that's really good. We've kind of asked that question in different ways. We've had it come up before, but I think that's the first time I've heard the angle of really talking to that next generation. I know, you know, they're so passionate already. What we're seeing in the alpha generation is what they're calling it. So passionate about the environment, and showing them that they have a place in the energy and the oil and gas industry as well is really exciting. And that's it for questions. So on behalf of the audience, I want to say thank you for answering those. And if you do have any other questions, if you're watching this still and maybe we didn't get to yours because of time or you think of it later, feel free to email your questions to us at socialmedia@nov.com and we will try to get your question answered. And I also want to mention if you want to watch any past episodes of the show of Inside Out Horizons, you can do so either at nov.com/live. That's where you can see all past episodes. But if you would rather listen to any episodes, you can search for Inside Out Horizons on any platform, wherever you listen to your podcast. Yeah, check us out.
All right. Well, thanks, Shelby. And Dr. Grauer, I really do appreciate you coming in and sharing your great perspectives, reminders, and passion for today's conversation about really energy transition and really, I'd say, the individual transition, right? The idea of all of us coming together and how we go along that journey. So if there are individuals that have watched this broadcast today live or in the future and want to connect with you to maybe discuss more, is LinkedIn your platform of choice?
LinkedIn is my platform of choice.
Okay.
Yes, please. I'm just Diana-Grauer on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So nothing complicated, no crazy number behind my name.
Yeah.
But connect with me on LinkedIn, please. Shoot me a direct message. I will message you back. I'm always on LinkedIn. It is my go-to social.
Well, you're in good company. Same here. So that's great. Well, Dr. Grauer, appreciate you being here on Inside Out Horizons, and appreciate all of our viewers for joining us today. So on behalf of the team here at NOV, we appreciate you watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.